Hi, this is Piero San Giorgio, author of Survive the Economic Collapse. I live in Switzerland, and as you know, Switzerland has the reputation of one of the best equipped and best trained armies in the world. I don't know if that's true, but certainly we think we can put our share of weight into any battle. But also Switzerland has a reputation of its fallout shelters, nuclear shelters for atomic war. Now, these were thought in the 50s and 60s when, of course, the risk of nuclear Armageddon was high between the United States and the Soviet Union. And so the law obliged every building and every house that was built to be equipped with a nuclear fallout shelter. And I'm going to show you one very typical. Of course, this law is not anymore into effect, but here we go. Let's look a little bit at typical Swiss nuclear fallout shelter. Here we are. We are in the basement of my parents' house. Yes, I do have parents. And this is the typical door, the typical entrance that we have into every house built in Switzerland, with a typical door. And as you can see, this is the size, and this is full steel. So as you can see, this is quite something. And these doors can be, of course, manually locked from the inside, and they can be manually opened from the outside, and you can, of course, block them from the inside. And you have a system with screw and bolt system, so that you can force the door open from the inside in case you have rubble, and therefore, with the screw and with the bolt, you can push the door against some sort of system that closes. So as you can see, this is the basement of the house, and this is the door, quite heavy door. And of course, the shelter has to be concrete steel, concrete reinforced with steel, and it has to be very strong. So here we are inside. So it's very small. So it's probably 3 meters to another 3 meters, so 9 square meters. And as you can see, my parents equipped it for a wine cellar, which can be useful. But of course, at the time, would have been against the law in the sense that you were supposed to have enough food and water to at least hold for 2 weeks, which was considered the time you needed for radiation to fall down a little bit so that you can get out. I'm not sure if it makes really sense, but certainly having this for every house in the country and every building, and of course every city had bigger shelters. This was a great insurance for a lot of the population to survive at least the initial blast of a possible nuclear war. Now, what you can see that is interesting in these shelters is that there is an exit, and this exit here is another full steel door, and it goes into a pathway with stairs that goes up in the garden. So in fact, if the house crumbles because of the blast, and don't ask me why they would send a nuclear weapon in the place my parents live, because it would make no strategic or tactical sense. But anyway, that was the law. And clearly, you could crawl out of that security exit if in case the main door was completely blocked. And here you can crawl up some stairs and get out in the middle of the garden. All these systems were equipped with a filter, and as you can see, my parents use it as storage. So this is completely something I personally wouldn't do if I was living in a city with such a shelter. I would keep it fully furnished and equipped. But hey, I'm not going to tell my parents how to live, and I'm not asking them to tell me how I live anyway, since already way too many years. So there's a filter, there's an air filter that takes the air from outside. Also, it goes into the garden, so it's supposed not to be covered by rubble in case the house falls down, and there is a filter. So once again, this idea was to have a very tiny amount, and the idea was to have food, shelter, and I would add certainly chemical toilets, so that in this case a family of 4 could stay for 2 weeks and radiation free inside some extremely in insulated area, and radiation wouldn't fall inside. So there is good wine. I can tell you there is very good wine, but the idea is that you not only food, and I would certainly add flashlights, batteries, something to have light. Clearly some mattresses and some beds, some cushions so that you could sleep. And of course, as I said, chemical toilets, very important. A lot of water. Perhaps no necessarily tools to, you could imagine something to cook, but clearly in such a confined space, of course the filter works two ways. It does filter air against radiation from the inside. I'm not sure the filter works these days. I mean, can work physically, but I'm not sure it would work against radiation. I think these things are way too old. They have not been put new. And of course, it does put out monoxide, carbon monoxide, CO2. Clearly, you would still be able to breathe after 2 weeks in such a shelter, and probably the filter could work for way longer. So yes, this engine, I believe it's electric, and I believe it should be checked. So this is not anymore asked by the law in Switzerland. You do not need to have such shelters. Are they really needed? Well, possibly in case of the nuclear war, and as you know, we are back into some kind of risk for that matter. And certainly it is something that you want to consider, that if you have one, if you buy a house that has such a shelter, or if you build one, well, definitely think accordingly in terms of lighting, in terms of food storage, in terms of sleeping, in terms of wastage, in terms of, sure, wine, why not? But certainly enough to withstand 2 or 3 weeks. Make sure everything works, the filter works. Now, this is expensive, and this was something that made houses in Switzerland very expensive. And I can tell you, this as a shelter, it's very small compared to what the army has. In the army, we have incredible sized shelters. You know, if you've seen that movie War Games with NORAD, well, we have the same in Switzerland times thousands. Our mountains are full of these big shelters. So anyway, I just want to share with you some of the ideas that of what a nuclear shelter was looking at, and I bid you farewell. Take care.